Hello and welcome to this exploring session. Today we are looking at the Cobbler's Prophecy by Robert Wilson Gent. This is one of 4 plays that are reliably, and in some cases slightly unreliably, attributed to Robert Wilson from the sort of 1590s sort of area, 1580s, 1590s. Some of them are really tricksy. This one's printed in 1594, so it's has an existence earlier. We can't be absolutely certain which playing company it belongs to, but we may be able to make some educated guesses or discussion on that point later. And it is mercifully relatively doubleable in terms of numbers, as we have a relatively small room this early Monday afternoon at the beginning of a week. Whether it would actually work doubling this low through the play overall, but over 2 sessions we can do this. It's not a long play, and hopefully we're going to have some interesting comparisons with some plays that we've already done in the past, and future comparisons for things coming up in the future. Today, reading Ceres and Emnius is...
Hi, I'm Eric, and I just realized how that's spelled. So it's like, yes, okay, I know this person. Yes, sorry.
Or do you? Reading Mercury, Scholar, Clio, and Herald is...
Hi, I'm Lois in London.
Reading Sateros and Charon is...
Hi, I'm Alan, and I've emerged from hell.
And reading Contempt, Melpomine and a Porter is...
Hi, my name's Elizabeth Amisu, and I'm an author based in Romford.
Reading A Country Gentleman, Zelota, Thalia, and Codrus is...
Hello, I'm Helen Good. I'm a historian, and I'm in Yorkshire, probably for the rest of my life.
And reading, well, it's sort of spelt Rafe, but it's probably Rafe, is...
Aliki, Chapple. I'm an actor and translator based in the northwest of England.
And I'm your host, Robert Crighton. I'll be reading stage directions as they appear. We have a reasonable number of original stage directions, as well as maybe some inferred ones. And I will also read in some echoing and all the other sort of ensemble voices, as it were. This will become clearer later. Without further ado, we're going to dive into the text. This is a text that doesn't technically come with scene numbers. Scene numbers have been added, so where scenes begin and end, there may be some debate. We'll know better by the end of these sessions. But what we're calling the opening, scene 1, it's a good place to start. Enter Jupiter and Juno. There's a lot of people who don't say anything, they're just standing in the room. Mars and Venus, Apollo after him, Bacchus, Vulcan limping, and after all, Diana wringing her hands. They pass by, while on the stage, Mercury from one end, Ceres from another meet.
Fresh, my son, fine witchcraft's greatest god, herald of heaven, soul-charming Mercury, tell me for thou wits, why do these celestial powers are thus assembled in Boeotia?
Plenty's rich queen, cheerer of fainting souls, whose altars are adorned with ripened sheaves, know that security, chief nurse of sin, hath bred contempt in all Boeotia. The old are scorned of the wanton young, unhallowed hands and hearts impurer far, rend down the altars sacred to the gods. Heaven is long-suffering, and eternal powers are full of pity to perversest men, which made the awful ruler of the rest summon this meeting of the heavenly states. The first was Jupiter, Juno with him, next Mars and Venus. Him I know you knew not. His harness is converted to soft silk. His wars are only wantonings with her, that scandalizeth heaven and heaps worlds hate. Apollo next, then Bacchus, belly god, and horned Vulcan, forger of heaven's fire. The last, poor Cynthia, making woeful moan that she is left with sweet virgin, post alone. I am but messenger, and must not denounce till the high senate of the gods decree it. But, sacred Ceres, if I may divine, in heaven shall Venus vaunt but little time.
So pleased did mighty Jove the doom were just. Amongst that holy train, what needs their lust?
I see a sort of wondering gazing eyes that do await the end of this conceit, whom Mercury, with waving of his rod and holy spells, enjoins to sit and see the effectual working of a prophecy.
And Ceres sheds her sweetest sweets in plenty,
And there's a stage direction casts comfits.
that while ye stayed their pleasure may content ye. Now do I leave thee, Mercury, and will in to take my place, to do what thou canst in wanton lust's disgrace.
Ceres, I will. And now I am alone, will I advise me of a messenger that will not faint? Will not, said I, nay, shall not faint, sent forth by Mercury. I am resolved the next I meet with, be it he or she, to do this message shall be sent by me.
Enter Rafe Cobbler with his stool, his implements and shoes, and sitting on his stool, falls to sing.
Hey, down a down a down, hey, down a down a downa. Our beauty is the bravest lass in all the towna. For beauty's sweet sake, I sleep when I should wake. She is so nut brown, her cheeks so red as a cherry, do make my heart full merry, so that I cannot choose in cobbling of my shoes, but sing, hey, derry, derry, down, derry.
Go to, Rafe. You'll still be singing love songs. It is your fashion.
And that is Zelota, his wife, within.
Content yourself, wife. 'Tis my own recantation. No love song neither, but a carol in beauty's condemnation.
Well, ye were best leave singing and fall to work by and by, while I to buy meat for our dinner to market do hie.
And you were best leave your scolding too, and get you away.
I'll come to you, Rafe. I'll course ye as I did a Saturday.
Course me, snones! I would thou durst come out of the door, and thou dost I knock thee on the head, thou errand thou. Is this not lustily spoken? I warrant she dare not come out.
Enter Zelota.
I'll see what I'll do. Where are ye, goodman lout?
He creeps under the stool.
Nobody tell her that I am under the stool.
Where's this prating ass, this dizzardly fool?
Why, here I am, dame. Let's see what thou canst say. Bestir your distaff. Do the worst ye may.
Alas, that I was ever born to see this sight. My Rafe is transformed to a wicked sprite.
She lies, i' faith. I'm here, under the stool.
Let me alone, Rafe. Hold thy peace, thou fool. I am a sprite indeed, a fiend, which will pursue thee still until I take a full revenge of all thy proffered ill, and for thy former dealings to thy husband hath been bad, I charm thee and enchant thee, queen. Thou henceforth shalt be mad, and never shall thy foolish brain cut off this frantic fit, till with thy hand unwillingly thou murder do commit.
And he charms her with his rod.
Nay, she is mad enough already. For she will do nothing with me but fight, and you make her more mad, she'll kill me outright.
Make me mad? Rafe? No faith, Rafe, though thou be a devil and a sprite. Ne'er toll the bell, I'll not be gossip. The child shall not be christened tonight. Go to the back house for the boy, bid the tankard bring the conduit home. I'll buy no plum porridge, I'll not be made such a mome, and because thou hast a fine rod, Rafe, I'll look in thy purse by and by, and if thou have any money in it, we'll drink the devil dry, devil dry, devil dry.
Here she runs about the stage, snatching at everything she sees.
Out of doubt she is mad indeed. See what a coil she doth keep.
Rafe, she shall trouble none of us. I'll charm her fast asleep.
Come, Ralph. Come, Rafe, let's go sleep. For thou must mend Queen Guinevere's shoes tomorrow. I have a pillow of my own. I'll neither beg nor borrow.
And exit Zelota, and we're just going to pause there mid-scene because this is doing so much stuff.
Great stuff.
You know, let's you know, some of it's not unproblematic in terms of the various relations between men and women, but it is also doing some really fun comedy business. It's doing some really weird things. It's doing, I just love Rafe just hiding under a stool. And seemingly tugging at the leg of Mercury, just going, you know, just get off my foot. So yeah, thoughts from the room about, because this there hasn't been that much text, but already so much has happened. This isn't hanging around at all. Helen.
Yeah, in the first part, I rather felt that throughout Mercury's exposition of the plot so far, we really needed the gods to do a little dumb show to assist the comprehension.
Well, maybe we have this procession of the gods, so maybe we can infer that that's part of that, and that we just don't have all the details, or certainly in a production we could put it in. I think you're right.
It's like a calling on song, you know, which you find in quite a lot of folk music.
Well, it's hard to know what to do about the Mars-Venus thing, because obviously Mars is coming on in what is pretty traditional iconography of being draped in silks and, you know, looking totally un-Mars-like. But Mercury says to Ceres, you know, I bet you didn't recognize him. And so now that Ceres is told who that is, maybe she should be reacting or something. I mean, one could make something of that. I don't know whether if the gods were still there, whether there was anything they could do at that point.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, that stage direction, they pass by while on the stage Mercury and Ceres meet. Is this coincident action
Yes.
rather than they enter process and then they chat? Or is this all actually a fairly carefully choreographed set of moves to go with the dialogue, but it's just not particularly fully laid out? We've got a helpful stage direction for Ceres of casting comforts, you know, sweetest sweets in plenty, and you know, I don't know how panto you want to go with that. You know, you're not really allowed to chuck sweets into the audience anymore.
What?
You are.
No.
If they're wrapped, yeah.
There are lots of reasons why it's not done with anything like the aplomb it used to be done. Used to be, just lob them out there. But you know, it's A, injury, and B, depending on what their content is as well. Whether you might accidentally hit someone with an allergy. Eric, sorry, we've gone on a tangent. Nothing to do with the play.
Allergy tangents. No, I was just gonna say whether the whole rod business is a double entendre or not, and I'm like, no, just stay out of the gutter, but also, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
Well, as a stage direction, it does sort of leap out of a huge charm. So with his rod, well, you know, many a day.
I think this scene's got to be played as low comedy.
Oh well, certainly the moment Rafe is on, you know, that comedy of, you know, the what he says and then he says to the audience. I mean, it's clearly a very nicely structured clown part, presumably or possibly even written by and for the author. So you know, that works very nicely.
There's also something
Like the store scene.
we've also had before. Cobblers turning up in plays, and they've been notably henpecked. Trying to remember which one it was. There was one where the cobblers were pressed to go to war. It's escaped me which play that was now, but I wonder whether there was almost a proverbial.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was one of those ancient British jobs.
Yeah.
Gorboduc or something.
Wasn't it
wasn't
Troubled
Gorbadoc,
Rain?
but
Or
It wasn't
something.
Gorbadoc.
Yeah, not Troubled Rain. One of the King historic plays where you've got the two cobblers and a spy as well.
Yeah.
okay, that's one for us to quickly do a search. I'll try and rustle up the text of what that one actually is, because that's really helpful so far. Yeah, it was a thing, wasn't it? Do you remember? No.
The wife dies in a house fire or something.
Oh, was that?
Right.
Yeah, okay.
I was in that one. I remember.
Yeah, I think we've done a second look on that. Was that in Lochrine?
I think so.
Yeah, I'm going to check on that anyway. I'll check on that. I'll do a quick search for cobblers and see what comes up. But yeah, just going back to Elizabeth's point about the nature of this stool scene. I mean, the thing is, how small is this stool? The smaller the stool, the funnier this should be.
It's just got 3 legs, and it's tiny, and he's huge. And he says to the audience, "Don't tell her I'm under the stool. Don't tell her I'm under the stool." That was good. That was really good.
And she wanders round the stage, probably practically tripping over him and doesn't see him. Because she's looking at head height, not at foot height.
Yeah.
Well, also, she's seen Mercury and seen, oh my God, what's happened to you?
Yeah, but that's before she sees Mercury. She can't spot him on the stage.
I think you may be right, Eric. Famous Victories does ring a bell.
Anyway, there are
I
a
just looked it
lot
up,
of
that's
cobblers
why.
available. So, I say I'll do a little search while you're reading in a moment.
But I do just wonder whether there is a proverbial thing in there.
I think in terms of this idea of a henpecked husband is probably associated with other trades as well. I don't think it's exclusively a cobbler thing. Other trades I think are probably available on that front, but I'm sure we can dig out some examples as we go. Other thoughts, different thoughts.
I'm not sure what the gods' problem is. They don't like Venus. Is that it? And what's going to be done with this message? I didn't get any of that.
Everything is just topsy-turvy. Everybody is incredibly corrupt and lascivious. I think the world's dominated by Venus at this point, and
Okay.
lust everywhere.
Helen.
I thought it was a bit over the top. I mean, it's fine sending a woman mad, but then saying she's got to commit murder struck me as being a little too much.
Well, it depends whether it
Well,
actually
she's
is.
mad, so she won't be guilty. I think he must just know the plot of the play.
He's cheated and read ahead.
Yeah.
Well, that's the
Well, he's
clowns
a
can do
god.
that. Yeah, and obviously tone is a matter of thing. Yes, it might be a bit excessive, but that doesn't mean until we know where it's actually going and how it all flows, that may or may not be an issue. Okay, we're mid-scene. I've got some homework to do while you read on. So the wife has exited and gone to sleep. Mercury and Rafe are left alone on the stage.
So sleep thy fill. Now, Rafe, come forth to me.
Come forth, quoth he. Mary, God bless us. Now you have made my wife mad. What shall become of me?
Fear not, come forth. I mean no hurt to thee.
Well, I'll trust you for once. What say ye?
Rafe, hie thee home, and thou shalt find upon thy bed attire that for a prophet's suit shall stand thee in good stead. A prophet thou must be, and leave thy work a while.
Prophet speaker. Here's a coil. What are you, I pray?
I am Mercury, the messenger of the gods.
And I am Rafe Cobbler. Twixt us there is some odds. But hear ye, God Markety, have you the authority to take a free man of his company and hinder him to be your prophet speaker? And when ye set him a work, give him nothing for his labor.
I must charm him asleep, or he will still be prating. I'll please thee well. I pray thee, Rafe, sit down.
Now I am set. Would I had a pot of ale.
We will have twain, but first attend my tale.
He charms him with his rod asleep.
Not far hence standeth Mars's court, to whom thus see thou say, Mars, though thou be a cock of the game that won'st to crow by day, and with thy sharpened spurns the craven cocks didst kill and slay, sith now thou dost but prune thy wings and make thy feathers gay, a dunghill cock that crows by night shall slyly thee betray, and tread thy hen, and for a time shall carry her away. And she by him shall hatch a chick, this country to decay. And for this pretty pullet's name thou shalt the better learn, when thou shalt only letters 5 within one name discern, 3 vowels and 2 consonants, which vowels, if thou scan, doth sound that which to every place conducteth every man. Then call to mind this prophecy, for that's the bastard's name. Then rouse thyself, then reach thy sword, and win thy wonted fame. Now, Rafe, awake, for I have done the task for which I came.
And exit Mercury. Rafe stretches himself and wakes.
Hey ho! Wake, quoth you. I think it's time, for I have slept soundly. And methought, in my sleep, this was God Mercury that had chanted my wife mad, for no good cause why. Above me thought I saw God Shebiter, that marvellously did frown, with a dart of fire in his hand, ready to throw it down. Below me thought there were false knaves walking like honest men very craftily, and few or none could be plainly seen to thrive in the world by honesty. Methought I saw one that was wondrous fat, pick 2 men's purses while they were striving for a gnat. And some that dwelt in streets were large and fair, kept back shops to utter their baddest wear. What meddle I with trades? Men, masters, and maids, yea, and wives too, and all are too bad. Be judged by my wife, that was never well, till she ran mad. But oh, the baker, how he played false with the balance, and ran away from the taker's talents. Brewer was as bad, the butcher as ill, for it's their trick to blow up lean meat with a quill, and with the stroke a butcher gave an ox, that loud bellowing did make, I lost sight of all the other tricks, and so suddenly did wake. Now must Rafe trudge about his profitation. Faith, you shall hear me troll it out after my fashion.
And exit. And that's the end of what we'll call the first scene. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I'm assuming Mercury is singing a song with that charm there. I don't know if it is, but it could be. It's not labelled as a song, but I was just wondering how songy that felt. And yeah, what's going on there? I have had a brief look. Yes, there is a cobbler in Locrine where there is the whole thing to do with. Again, it's sort of a bit of a double act, but Strumbo the cobbler in that, and there is also one in part of the double act in Famous Victories. So yes, two cobblers going off to war in various different ways. One of whom, his wife, I think, gets brutally killed, and one I think gets casually killed. I think they might both. I can't remember. I haven't double checked that throughout both, but I don't think that's going to be what happens here. I think that's fine. Thoughts about Mercury and Rafe in this sequence? Alan, then Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, I can see that you got the mispronunciation of Mercury. The god Shebiter or She-biter, which I think it probably is, because that gives you an extra laugh line. I'm not quite sure what he's supposed to be mispronouncing there.
Jupiter. I was sure Jupiter.
Oh, Jupiter.
That makes sense.
Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this scene went by so fast. I don't know if it was like Aliki's really snappy delivery, but the scene was I thought it was quite a long scene, but it just went by so quickly. I think the action is quickly, really snappy and quick, which is very, very interesting and engaging.
It's very economical. There's no real fat here at all. We've got a relatively small number of characters who are actually speaking. We're introduced to them fairly clearly, and they do their business and go. And there's some nice stuff. We've got songs. We've got magic. We've got people going mad. What's not to like so far? Helen.
Nice bit of social commentary. Those that dwelt in streets were large and fair, kept back shops to utter their baddest wear. And
That's what that was.
and the other one, the butcher is blowing up his lean meat with a quill. So, I mean, nowadays they inject water into it, but he's obviously, maybe it is water he's injecting, or it could be air that he's blowing some.
Yeah.
Or is it a mispricing thing that you're mislabeling how that works? Is it by how you write it?
Oh, I see. Yeah. No, I yes, it could be that.
But I like the idea that using a quill as a sort of a method of injection. I don't know whether that would
work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would work all right, but it's also mislabeling.
Yeah.
Trading standards, where are you when we need you?
Well, exactly.
Oh, they were fierce with trading standards, but the trouble was they were also bribable.
Lois.
Yeah, it's that authentic Robert Wilson touch, I think. The social satire, that's the bit that runs through all the plays, but it's just been less obvious so far in this one. The kind of simplicity type character that sees everything and tells everything.
Okay, any additional thoughts before we move into our second scene with new characters we've not engaged with so far? Eric.
I did like the beginning of the thing where it just went, yes, so Mercury, tell me about what's going on in this place, as opposed to sort of cutting it into the middle of the action. And then you've got all this sort of elaborate plot to make Rafe a prophet, although I don't know, it's just kind of why would you do that sort of why would you make not indeed, but it does say a dunghill cock did crow and so on and so forth, which is kind of, I don't know, that speech is particularly interesting. Just and sort of the whole thing about Mars's court, we're just talking about war or something else.
I think the point is that the offspring, the bastard offspring of this corrupt situation, it's all going to become clear eventually in the plot, but it's an incredibly complicated pun and rebus and anyway, all sorts of stuff going on that you're supposed to figure out as you go along, just the sort of stuff that the author obviously loves. But the main thing, I guess, is that that Mars's submission to Venus is going to produce disaster.
And there's something interesting, sort of an effect to that opening, which feels almost Jacobean in the sense of you've got this big grand thing going on, and then you have two people vaguely commentating to each other to ease the audience into the action. That's how, in my mind, I associate it.
Very Malfi.
Yeah, it has that sort of thing. So it's nice to find something similar earlier. So it's always nice to see that these things can be more of a continuum. Okay, let's move on to scene 2. So we have enter Sateros, a soldier, and Contempt, who is currently in vice tradition, going back into time immemorial, naming himself Content. Content. I'll put my teeth in later.
Thus have I served in my prince's wars against the Persian and the Asian powers. coal-black moor that revels in the straits have I repelled with my loss of blood. My scars are witness of my hard escapes, my wrinkles in my face, made old by care, when yet my years in their chiefest prime, are glasses of my grief, lights of my languor, that live disgraced and have deserved honour.
I am the admirest in Boeotia. By honouring me, thou shalt obtain preferment.
Unto the gods and prince do soldiers honour, and wert thou one of these, I would adore thee.
I am of power more than all the gods, to sit and rule the hearts of all degrees. They have in me contempt, as thou shalt see, a present instance in these entering men.
And enter Emnius, a courtier, with him a scholar and a country gentleman.
Hail to Contempt's divinest excellence.
Content, our sweetest good, we do salute thee.
Oh, last I am not least in duteous kindness. To thee content, although thou be no god, yet greater in account than all of them.
But if ye knew his name were Orligerus, which signifieth contempt, ye would not mistake him and name him Content.
The scholar, be patient. For though you not write not my name, you love my nature. And therefore, gentlemen, forward with the discourse intended at our last meeting. And in that conference, this gentleman a soldier, I presume will make one.
Being a soldier, his company is fit for any honest gentleman, and therefore welcome into our company.
I thank you, sir.
Though the courtiers speak him fair, in heart I know he disdains him for his base apparel, wherein he observes on principle of my law. Welcome him, scholar.
To me, a soldier is a welcome man.
I kindly thank you, sir.
Enter Rafe.
Rafe is muted and is arriving. I'm sorry,
Sir, what, sir?
Oh, sir, what, sir? Or what, sir, have we here? Why, ye proud pagans and panem nostrums, think ye no better of a prophet than ye would of a peddler, and make ye no more account of me than you do of a cobbler?
As thou art.
As I am. Know, ye little goose-cap god, know that God Markedy made me a prophet, and sent me full of a message to the blundering god of the thundering war, to Mars, to Mawa, Wawa, Wara, Rars. 'Twill come near your nose, little god, I can tell you.
Well, hold thy peace of that, and let us hear these gentlemen dispute.
Will they dispute? Whereon?
He of the court, the other of the country, this of books, that of battles.
And I of prophesy.
No, thou and I will sit still and give our judgment of this controversy.
Well, content, but I will speak my mind when I list. That's flat.
Sit down then. Gentlemen, when you please, begin.
First, I am a courtier, daily in my prince's eye, which one good of itself alone is able to make my estate above all other happy. By it I get wealth, favor, credit, countenance. On me attend suitors, paying, and promising more than either sometimes they are able to perform or at most times expect.
That's true, for I was a suitor 3 year unto ye for mending your pantables, and I was promised more than I could ever get, or did ever look for.
At the entertainment of strangers, who but the courtier is in brave account, or to the heavenly fellowship of divinest beauty, and sweet consort of lovely ladies, who but the courtier is called. While the scholar sits all day inventing syllogisms, the country gentleman plodding among poor hinds, and this bare soldier here carousing among his prating companions.
Why, a soldier of desert, as with no other I do consort, can be no less a gentleman, and some courtiers are scarce so much. Desert I not is oft preferred, but often a flattery. because I'm homely clad, you hold me dishonourable. But in this plain suit have I been where you dare not, with all your silks.
Why, I have been where thou darest not come.
Aye, that's in the mercer's book, where I will not come.
A word with ye, master soldier.
Now, sir,
'Tis 'cause the mercer will not trust ye, for he knows his book is as good as a sconce for ye. You'll never out till you be torn out or fired out.
howe'er I despised, yet I am a gentleman. And in the conflict of Arbaces, general of Persia at Marathon, I rescued the colours of Boeotia. I've had honey words and fine reward, too little to bestow among my main soldiers. Soldiers observe laws, therein appears their justice, at least equaling the scholar, bring princes to thraldom, triumphing over courtiers, are liberal to give, wherein for the most they excel the country gentlemen. In brief, they are the swords of heaven, to punish the salve of heaven to pretty, of whose number being not the meanest, I think myself nothing inferior to any of these gentlemen.
But thou hast made many a cock cuckold by stealing away his hen.
Now, nay, my life excelleth in all. I in the country live, a king. My tenants, as vassals, are at my will commanded. Fearful I know they are to displease me, than divers of your courtiers to offend the duke. Come there any casks to be levied? I touch not mine own store, for on them I take it. And I may say to you with some surplusage, my wood they bring me home, my hay and corn in harvest, their cattle, servants, sons and selves are at my command.
Oh, Jure, quaque and Juria.
Oh nay, and if you speak Latin, reach me last. Hark ye, master scholar, hark ye. The time shall come, not long before the doom, that in despite of Rome, Latin shall lack, and Greek shall beg with a wallet at his back. For all are not sober that goes in black. Go to, scholar, there's a learning for your knack.
At my list I can rack their rents, set them to fines, bind them to forfeits, force them to what I please. If I build, they be my labourers. If bargain, on them I build. And for my good look, they are content to endure any travail.
But for all this ill and wrong, look, the cobbler's song. The high hill and the deep ditch which ye digged to make yourselves rich, the chimneys so many and alms not any, the windows woeful cries, and babes in the street that lies. The bitter sweat and pain that tenants poor sustain will turn to your bane, I tell ye plain, when burning fire shall reign, and filled with botch and blain, the sinew and each vein. Then these poor that cry, being lifted on high, when you are all forlorn, shall laugh you loud to scorn. Then when there will be the scholar's allegories, where the lawyer with his dilatories, where the courtier with his bravery, and the money-monging mate with all his knavery, bethink me I can nowhere else but here but in hell where Divus dwells. But I see ye care not yet, and think these words for me unfit. I guess I speak for lack of wit. Stand aside, for I'm disposed to spit.
Be quiet, Cobbler. Let's hear the scholar speak.
I give him retortee to it.
What the courtier dreamingly possesses, the country gentleman with curses, and the soldier with cares, I quietly enjoy without control. In my study, I contemplate what can be done in battles, and with my pen hurt more than thousands do with pikes. I strike him that sees me not.
I thought you were a proper man of your hands to come behind one.
I see the height of heaven.
Thou makest no haste thither.
I view the depth of hell.
Is there any room in hell for cursed wives and cobblers' shops?
Content is my landlord. Peace and quiet are my companions. I am not with the courtier, bound to dance attendance, nor with the countryman bind I others to attend on me. I possess pleasure more than mortal, and my contemplation is only of the life immortal.
But you would be glad to creep at credit in the court, scholar, and not be curious of the means for all your coyness.
I will not acquaint you, sir, with my intent, for they are fools that in secret affairs are too familiar. Know this, that I intend to await occasion.
Faith, master scholar, yet it stands not with your protestation.
Nor with you, soldier, to be thus blunt after your rude fashion.
Alas, sir, you must needs be excellent for peers and plain. Your poor tenants pray for you. Their bread and cheese is seldom denied to any, when your small beer is scarce common to many. You know what will be made of a fat ox as well as the grazier, of the tallow as well as the butcher, of a tod of wool as well as the stapler.
What hath any man to do with what I do with mine own?
Aye, all's thine own that comes into thy hands.
Sir, you would make enough of it in yours too.
Aye, master courtier, that's to deal as you do.
This soldier is as rough as if he were in the field.
Where you would be as tame.
As the proud heart, though a beggar's habit.
Where I frequent this habit serves my turn. And as goodly a sight were it to see you there in your silks, the scholar skirmishing in his long gown, or the country gentleman riding on a fat ox, with a mole spade on his neck.
What? Riding, running, braving, brawling. I see ye pass not for a prophet's calling. Therefore, I will not be so mad to cast pearls to swine so bad.
Rafe, say little.
Little, seeing God, I shall see you in a spittle.
And exit Rafe.
Young gentlemen, which have highly contented me, what will you now do?
Marry, we will alter the 18 pence ordinary. How say ye, gentlemen?
No, sir, not I. 'Tis too dear by my faith.
Why, you shall be my guest for this once. How say you, master soldier?
No, sir, I must turn one of your meals to 3, and every one a sufficient banquet for me.
Faith, and you had kept your news until now. Ye should have been my guest, for your talk would have served well for the table.
That's a practice of thine own art, makes thy company born withal, where otherwise thou wert no fit guest. The tales at some tables are as good as testerns.
Nay, then I perceive ye grow choleric. Come, sirs.
They proffer to go in.
Why, gentlemen, no farewell to your little god?
Suffice
Suffice it without vain ceremonies, we show ourselves dutiful. Enough, fare ye well.
Exeunt courtier, scholar, country gentleman.
Soldier, what wilt thou do?
Faith, sir, as I may.
Wilt thou serve me, and do as I will thee, and thou shalt not want?
No, for if thy name be Contempt, as the scholar said, I abhor and defy thee.
Even as the child doth worm seed hid in raisins, which of itself he cannot brook, so thou canst not abide my name, but lovest my nature for proof, wanting, living, railest on the city, grievest at the country, yea, grudgest at the king himself. Thou sayest thou art going to thy patron Mars with a supplication for bettering thy state, and how, by war, where how many rapes, wrongs, and murders are committed, thyself be judge, all which thou esteemest not of, so thy want thy own want be supplied.
Contempt. Herein thou reasonest like them thyself. Base-minded men I know there are in field, that do delight in murder, rape, and blood, as there are tares in corn, and weeds with flowers, and envious snakes among the fleeting fish. But for the noble soldier he is just, to punish wrongs, protect the innocent, weaken the tyrant, and confirm the right. Want cannot make him basely mutinous. Wealth cannot make him proudly insolent. In honourable thoughts dwell his content, and he is foe to all that love contempt.
Then Sateros, thou art no mate for me.
And exit Contempt.
No, upstart scorners are fit slaves for thee.
And exit the soldier. End of scene. This is doing very different work to the first scene. We've got this sort of vice figure here. We've got this little debating school going on, which again also is sort of leaning back to the kind of debate plays that we are still certainly around at this time, but have sort of more of a foothold in our imagination earlier. So it's doing a very, very different job, and Rafe is turning up and sort of being a bit destabilizing through this sort of conventional scene. For Eric, maybe suddenly getting flashbacks to the Peddler's Prophecy, where I have to say, yes, the attribution of that with this author does now feel very, very firm in my mind, because it's very similar. In the Peddler's Prophecy, you have various scenes where people are discussing or doing something, and the peddler turns up and destabilizes it in a similar way to this. So it's, I'm feeling a lot more confident about that as an attribution in my mind. Opinions may vary. Thoughts about this scene? It's doing it's a very different things going on. Aliki.
I generally pride myself in understanding what I'm saying reasonably well. I had no idea what I was saying for about half of that, which
Same
probably
here.
showed.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the storytelling is suddenly much less clear, and the debate that they're having it's much, I know they're having a debate. I know vaguely where it's what they're talking. I'm not really following it beyond as an outline.
I picked up some elements that reminded me of Joe Hill's political song, The Preacher and the Slave, also known as Long-Haired Preachers, which I put in the chat, which is like, oh, you come and preach, but then where's the food? I picked up some elements of that. But that's about it. I don't get it. What's going on philosophically?
I'll go with Helen, then Lois.
I think, firstly, there is a tremendous difference in what these people are wearing. We kept on getting elements of that, but I think it's quite important. Now, Rafe is the difficult one because he is recognized, presumably by his attire or what he's carrying, as a cobbler.
Mm-hmm.
But nevertheless, he should by this time have put on the mantle of prophecy, which was lying on his bed. Mercury left it for him. It seems to me that Rafe, all the way through, is suddenly getting prophetic flashbacks. He's trying to be normal and take part, but suddenly he gets possessed by the spirit of prophecy and whizzes out only partially appropriate little bits of his prophecy because they're there and he can't keep them down. I mean, for the others, I was reading Country Gentleman, and I must say it was difficult to work out anything good about the man at all as I went on reading, because he was obviously an absolute swine. But what they're all trying to do is prove which profession has the most contempt, or possibly the most dignity. But I think the most contempt. And they're all bringing forward arguments as to which one of them produces the most contempt. Sort of.
Yeah, for those who've listened to on the podcast or some of the exploring sessions, with something like Witty and Witless, where people are discussing who is happier, someone who has a great understanding or someone who doesn't, or gentleness and ability, who has the most natural gentility. It's that kind of debate that fundamentally there isn't really a definite answer. So you can have these people swapping things and giving things away about their personality and their nature. I love the idea that Rafe is sort of like this badly tuned television that every so often suddenly jumps to another station and does something like that, and then back again, and he's not quite sure that his clothing is somewhere between Prophet and Cobbler. That he's under clothes, but he's got this mantle on, and nobody's convinced. Nobody's convinced. He's just annoying. Lois, I saw Eric, and also Elizabeth. So Lois first.
Yeah. I think there are various, changes of direction or something in it. I mean, the one that puzzled me since I was reading Scholar is just that he comes in talking to Content and then immediately switches and says, actually, his Greek name really means contempt, and you should all know this. And then what is the point of the rest of the scene in that case? It seems to me that they should still be in a state of confusion about him rather than knowing the truth about his being contempt. I really don't get that. I mean, all I could think of was that he was another of these vice figures who actually is wearing his name somewhere on him, and Scholar goes around behind him and sees it or something. Because otherwise, how does he know it? That was just one thing. But yeah, it's one of those the estates debates that you've mentioned. And usually you expect each side to give the case for their profession or whatever, and then somebody else comes in with the case against it. But what we seem to have here was the scholar is giving a rather saccharine but not false image of the scholar's life, whereas the country gentleman is condemning himself out of his own mouth and making it quite obvious that he's milking his tenants for all they're worth, and that they're fools to give him anything. And the soldier seems to me to be completely valorized by this. He is the one that the author is behind. And Rafe is partly doing what the fool does anyway, coming out with home truths about everything, and partly sounding completely dotty. I mean, I don't think the author's quite got it under control. Although I just still think, as with the other Wilson plays, that doing it in a sort of Brechtian style, which I thought was really good in the bit that Aliki was singing, does kind of bring out what I think Wilson is after here.
Yeah, there's really important big questions that we need to dig into actually about Wilson's intent and how effective the satire is, and how much of that is what is the author satirizing and what is the author actually to some degree proposing, and there's lots of questions there. It was like just looking at the soldier when he first appeared, and I thought, oh, is this a braggart soldier? Is what he's saying true? Are the things that he's saying possible, or are they obviously not? And I'm sort of looking at them going, they seem like they could be possible, but maybe someone who in the know knows that actually those things don't combine together or things. So yeah, it's difficult to get hold on. Eric, then Elizabeth.
I was going to say it reminds me a bit of, I think it's Three Ladies of London, where you've got like all that sort of random stuff about the rent in the middle of it, and then it just kind of keeps going for no reason. Well, I know it keeps going for a reason, but I mean, that's what it reminded me of, where it's just like this whole thing of, oh, you're the most hypocritical because you raise the rents and stuff, and oh no, you're the most hypocritical because you tell people what they want to hear and all that stuff.
Yes, so yes, it does match what he's doing elsewhere. So Three Ladies and Three Lords and Three Ladies are the other two texts that we've got. So it does seem like the author is doing things, and maybe it's a question of context, that outside of the context of his own time, this is just a lot harder to grab hold of, and that there are other things that we're not getting. Elizabeth.
I wanted to say I really liked Aliki's song. I thought she did it really, really well. I loved how the song was just kind of plopped into the middle of the text, kind of abstractly. And I liked Sateros. I thought I understood Sateros really well. I feel like Sateros was the voice of reason.
It does feel like Sateros is not quite with the group. He's sort of he's being introduced to the group, and that's sort of where the scene opens. Helen.
Yes, I think the going to the ordinary, which appears to be a very expensive ordinary, the country gentleman is too mean, but the soldier is just unable. He must be a very virtuous soldier because he has no money at all, and also he doesn't gorge himself on other people's tab. He knows that he must be used to eating about a third of that for a meal, and that you keep it even, your consumption.
Okay, any additional thoughts before we move on? We have 4 more scenes to do this session. I see nothing. Oh, yeah, Lois.
I think the only other point is that apparently this whole thing has been set up by Contempt. I mean, the debate is for her amusement, isn't it? And she says at the end she's really enjoyed it. And it's a totally artificial construct, but I think that seems to be the idea.
Yeah, but it's the weird thing is that Contempt doesn't actually engage. You know, if there was a lot of back chat from Contempt throughout, then that would sort of make more sense, because then just there's popcorn and there's
Yeah.
you know, but that doesn't seem to be what's happening. So there's something.
Yeah.
Something there that again doesn't quite, as of yet. Maybe there'll be more clues later on. Eric.
I was just gonna say that it seems very episodic. Like I don't know, maybe Rafe is just like wandering from one scene into the next by accident, sort of like, oh look what I found. Yeah, I don't know. It just seemed, well, especially based on the start of the next scene. But yeah.
Well, yes. Let's see if we're. I mean, we've only done 2 scenes, so in a sense, it can only be episodic at this stage. Let's see as we go forward whether that is, because we've been here before in terms of episodicness. So let's see if Wilson is going to be doing something else. Scene 3: enter Clio, Melpomine, and Thalia. Clio with a penknife, Melpomine being idle, and Thalia writing.
Cleo, a pen.
Both pen and quill I miss.
One Estridge pen yet in my penner is, quickly take that and make a pen for me.
Feathers of the blasphemous bird shew what the wearers be.
Melpomine, lend me a pen.
Here's too hard for your writing.
Enter Rafe Cobbler.
Quickly, a pen. Ha ha! Fond, foolish man.
Fool? No fool neither, though none of the wisest, dame, but a prophet of one of Merlin's kind, I am.
What fellow prophet? What fellow name?
Rafe Cobb.
Lur, speak out.
In faith.
A pen in haste, that I may write this pageant ere it be past.
Comes there a pageant by? I'll stand out of the green men's way for burning my vestment.
A pen, good Clio. Fie, how he make me stay.
Make shift a while, you shall have this straightway.
If I had a pen, as I have none, for I know use such tool, thou shouldst have none and it, for at my first coming thou calledst me fool.
A pen, it will be gone incontinent.
Hold, there's thy pen.
But are you the gods of the scriveners that you make pens so fast, trow we?
And enter the soldier Sateros.
Oh, sisters, shift, we are betrayed, another man I see.
Silly man at your command, be not afraid of me.
No, 'tis the soldier. He'll do you no hurt, I warrant you.
See a man come in this place. It is so strange to us, as we are to be held excused, that are amazed thus. But art thou a soldier?
Yea, lady.
So that's a welcome unto me.
Not so to me.
And what am I?
Be whist a while. I'll tell thee by and by.
Oh, that's some men's yet for calling me a fool.
Thanks, ladies, for your courtesies. At the sight of 3 such goddesses on a sudden, hath driven me into certain muses,
Certain muses
especially being alone so solitary in this wood.
in this wood.
Hark, soldier, somebody mocks thee.
Mocks thee
Mocks me much.
much.
Hold thy peace, good Rafe.
Good Rafe.
Rafe, that's my name, indeed. But how shall I call thee?
I call thee.
Dost thou? Mass, and I'll come to thee if I knew where thou art.
Thou art.
Heart, faith, and thou be as pretty a wench as any of these three. My mad wife shall never know that I play a mad part.
Part.
I'll come.
Come.
Faith, and I will have at thee.
And exit Rafe.
Thus are well rid of one that would have troubled our talk, and this artificial echo has told thee what we are, certain muses dwelling in this wood, in number twice so many more as we be here.
Your names, good ladies?
Mine, Melpomine, hers, Clio, this that writes, Thalia.
Might I, without offence, entreat 3 things? I should be greatly bound.
We will not deny these 3 things that can participate to these thousands.
First, I would request of this lady whether she write with this estric quill of purpose or for want of other.
Somewhat for want, but especially of purpose. The men which now do minister me matter to write are near the nature of this estrich, who having the body of a bird hath the head of a beast. She is greedy, devouring and digesting all things, and builds her nest in sand. So are my worldlings, bodied and feathered as birds to fly to heaven, but headed as beasts to imagine beastly things on earth. Down to the which their camels' necks do draw their very noses. Greedy are they, devouring the orphan's right and digesting the widow's wrongs. Foolish, forgetful and froward, building their nest on sand, which the wind of heaven's wrath or water of worldly affection doth scatter and wash away. Thus thou art answered for the first. Demand the rest.
Next, ladies, why do you twain stand idle and let Thalia take the pain?
On deities and jests, the world is only set. For me, there is no work in no tragic scene. Battles are done, the people live in rest. They shed no tears, but are secure past mean.
Why lend you not Thalia then some pens?
My pens are too sharp to fit her style. I shall have time to use them in a while.
But gentle Clio, methinks your ink is dry.
It may be well. I have done writing,
What did you register when you did write?
Oh, the works of famous kings and sacred priests, the honorable acts of leaders brave, the deeds of Codrus and Horatii, the love Lycurgus bore to Spartans' state, the lives of ancient sages and their saws, their memorable works, their worthy laws. Now there is no such thing for to indict, but toys that fits Thalia for to write.
Heavy tale, good lady, you unfold. Are there no worthy things to write of as were of old?
Yes, divers princes make good laws, but most men overslip them, and divers dying give good gifts, but their executors nip them.
Tiffany is stepping to the stage, and she hath sworn to whip them.
The third and last thing I require is, if you can, show me the mighty Mars, his court.
Walk hence, a slight shoot up the hill, and thou shalt see his castle wall.
Ladies, the gifts that I can give is humbly thrice. Thank you all.
And exit Sateros the soldier.
Farewell, poor soldier.
Thalia, now we are alone. Tell us what pageant 'twas you called for pens even now so hastily to end.
'Twas thus. You know the gods long since set down pleasure from heaven to comfort men on earth, pleasure abused in country, court, and town by speeches, gestures, and dishonest mirth, made humble suit that he to heaven might pass again from world where he so wronged was. His suit obtained, and ready he to climb, sorrow comes sneaking in, performs his deed, snatches his robe, and ever since that time, 'tis pain that masks, disguised in pleasure's weed. The pageant thus, with cost and cunning trim, the worldlings welcome pain instead of him. Loath was I that unpenned one jot of this should go, because I smile to see for weal how sweetly men swill woe.
Is the first word I must write, beginning where you end. I have ink enough and pens good store.
Perhaps the world will mend.
I would it would.
Why, if it should, you fail in your account.
Then you perhaps will have some work.
Hush, come, let's mount the mount.
And exit the muses. I just love the idea of the muses not being able to find a pen. You know, I have all this inspiration. I do not have the facilities. It's a really lovely idea, and I'm really tickled by it. Aliki.
I'm really tickled by this scene. I mean, he's aiming at a fairly erudite audience, right? So he's got the muse of comedy telling you humans only want woe. The muse of tragedy says, okay, so my story starts with woe. And the muse of history all kind of wrangling, I guess, over the pen. There's something really, really neat going on. I don't know how you illuminate it for people who don't have the names of the muses in the backs of their heads.
Yeah. Well, they semi sort of. There's this bit when Melpomine just after the exit of Rafe just sort of turns to the audience and says, "Now, for those, well, it's the soldier, but it's basically saying if you've not been paying attention, this is what this scene is about," and I really love it, Lois.
Yeah, well, I think part of the point is that it's such a trivial age. We're still living in the period when Mars is subservient to Venus, that comedy is the only thing people want. And I mean, she tells this little allegory about how people think they're getting pleasure, but they're really getting pain, which is a typical Robert Wilson view of life. And Clio, I think there may be a sort of parody of the three fates here as well. I mean, one of them spins the thread and one cuts it, one knots it. I forget how they do this, but I mean, what we've got here is this one pen, and Clio is cutting the pen, isn't she? I mean, she's making the pen, and she does eventually give it to Thalia. I don't know. I mean, I think people might see it because it's really funny anyway that we've got only 3 muses, because obviously the cast can't possibly run to 9, and but they're sort of parodying the 3 fates perhaps too.
Yeah, and I love that Melpomine is just going, yeah, I've got loads of pens. They're too sharp for you. You can't have them.
Yeah, they're too sharp. Yeah.
What was the name of those weavers of the loom of fate? They reminded me of those 3, I think it was supposed to be 3 witches or something that weave the loom of fate. Yeah. And they reminded me of that.
Yeah.
Helen, then Eric.
Oh, one way of dealing with it would be if each of them had a volume which was labeled in sufficiently large letters for the audience to see. History, tragedy, and comedy. I mean, it must be possible to get this over.
I think almost when they first appear, it's spotlight and a big sign above their heads, and flash it, as at the very beginning of the scene. I think we should spell these things out. I think that's fine, because it's very playful with it.
I mean,
yeah.
they wouldn't be that hard to costume that way too. You would need the sign at the beginning, right? but something, I don't know, she's covered with words. I mean, they're all words, but yeah, the comedy and tragedy masks are the obvious ones, because that's...
But the what he's saying is history is at an end. There are no battles. People may make laws, but nobody takes any notice of them.
So it's set in the mid-90s then.
And I rather like the idea because, of course, this is a comedy, so presumably written by Thalia or under her auspices. And you are rushing to get a pen because something really comic has just happened and you've got to get it down for your next play.
Well, that's that semi-meta thing when Thalia's talking about the plot. I mean, it doesn't quite go far enough for me because it's vaguely talking about what they were discussing earlier. But I'd really quite like it if Thalia just says, well, Ceres and Mercury come on and then this Cobbler appears. That's sort of what I was hoping. And it almost did that, but it didn't really. And it was sort of, it was so close. It was so close. Eric?
Just that bit about the, what do you call it, echo and the muses, and it's like, oh yes, look, this wonder, it's just this whole thing about, so that they can introduce the muses basically, who have already been on stage, but it's just like, oh, this artificial echo hath told thee what we are, certain muses dwelling in this wood. It's like, okay, it's a bit like, look, this is where muses are. Kind of like big sign, neon flashing lights or whatever you want. I don't know, it's just like it's like the previous scene, isn't it, though, where it's like, look, I am a courtier because I'm dressed like one, or like, look, I am, whatever. It's very sort of obvious.
Yeah, and it's playful with it. I mean, it's that thing. Echo doesn't enter. Echo is just a voice. But I quite like the idea of Echo actually entering and just going, look, certain muses. Look. Just to really ram it home. Helen, then Lois.
When we started the scene, I had a feeling that they were indoors, that the pageant or whatever it was happening just outside the window. Thalia was looking out, that she had a proper writing slope, that there was, that they were within an area. And I was really surprised to discover they were in a wood.
Lois.
I'm just wondering, what is this echo? I mean, I suppose if they're in a wood, it could be natural, but they say it's an artificial echo. So where does it come from? I mean, do the muses, I mean, they're delighted that it works because it gets rid of Rafe, which is what they wanted. I don't really get it. I mean, it's almost as if they had some secret machine under their desk that they operate at this point that starts producing echo noises that gets rid of him.
Unless it's literally Echo. I mean, that's the thing, the actual personification.
It's possible that the muses could be doing it. The one that Rafe isn't looking at does the echo bit.
In
Just
turn.
ventriloquism.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about pageant, of course, the problem with pageant is it's a very versatile word. But, if we're talking about sort of more civic-y kind of outdoory kind of things, these characters turn up in these all the time. You'll see personifications of muses and other figures, on the streets. So, I mean, again, it's one of these problems. The word pageant can basically mean any kind of performative text, but there is an interesting resonance there. Other thoughts before we move on to scene 4, Eric?
I love how the muses are not above commenting, like, let's mount the mount and stuff. It's just like, what happened there? Just like, sort of all this elegant stuff about, whoa, and blah, blah, blah. And then something like, oh, tush, let's mount the mount.
I just love Clio. Perhaps the world will mend.
As a historian, she should know better.
I say, it's when I was saying it's the 90s. Of course, this vaguely is the 1590s, but I was thinking the 1990s and the end of history being announced, and it has a certain quality to that, so that's interesting. Anyway, we will move forward to scene 4, as we have it labelled, and we have Enter Rafe Cobbler, whooping. Unless he's unwell, in which case it's hooping, it's depending on your point of view.
Wah-ha! Ho! Wah-ho-ho! Ho-ha! Ho-whoop! Did nobody see the mocking sprite? I am sure I have followed her up and down all this day, crying and calling, while my throat is hoarse again. I'll conjure her too. 'Tis in vain, for knowledge hath knocked that in the brain. But be it devil or be it sprite, I'll call again to have a sight. Yah-ho! Nay, I'll call again.
Enter Charon.
Again? Aye, and again too, I know. What night and day no respite row. Come, if thou wilt go over Styx, rest thou stay a while, I think there will come so many my boat will sink.
Over sticks, aye, and over stones. Here's a question for the nonce. Why? What art thou, I pray thee tell?
Why, Charon, ferryman of hell.
What the devil do I do?
A boat! A boat! A boat!
Hark, what a coil they keep. Come, if thou wilt, to hell with me.
A boat! A boat! A boat!
This should be the voice of a woman. Comes women thither too?
Why, men and women every hour, I know not what to do.
A boat! A boat! A boat!
This should be the voice of some great man.
Why, popes and prelates, princes and judges more than I number can. But the covetous misers, they fret me to the gall. I think they bring their money to hell, for they weigh the devil and all.
Mass, may well be, for there's little money stirring on the earth.
Charon, a boat! A boat! I'll pay thee well for thy hire.
Why, what art thou that makes such haste?
So troubled with nuns as never friar was, therefore, good Charon, let me be first, that over the ford shall pass.
Come, sirrah, thou hearest what a calling they keep. Wilt thou go?
Why, Charon, this calling makes thee mad, I guess. Why, I'm no spirit. Living Rafe, and God Marcady sends me of business.
Tush, thou be sent of God. We cannot hold thee. Farewell.
Enter Codrus.
Yet gentle Charon, carry me.
Thee? Why, what art thou? That living Ceres to go to hell.
The wretchedest man of wretches most that in this wretched world doth dwell, despised, disdained, starved, whipped and scorned, pressed through despair myself to quell, I therefore covet to behold, if greater torment be in hell.
A boat! A boat! A boat!
I come.
Nay, prithee, let them tarry, and hearken to the poor.
Codrus, I cannot help thee now, and yet I wish thee well. There's scarcely room enough for rich, so that no poor can come to hell. But when the ditch is digged down as clean as is the well that parted hell and purgatory, then, if thou chance to call, because I can't see as thou art poor, thou art impatient to carry thee quickly into hell. Codrus, I'll be content. And now the time will not be long, for there's commission gone for workmen that have power to make Elysium and Limbo one. And there are shipwrights sent for too, to build me up a bigger boat. A boat, said I? Nay, a whole hulk, and that the same may safely float. Cocytus, Lethe, Phlegeton shall all be digged into Styx. For where one wants to come to hell, I tell thee now, come 5 or 6. For ignorance that he wants to be, his wilful blindness now become. So thou must come when room is made. I tell thee yet, there is no room.
I pray thee, tell me one thing.
That I will, Rafe. What's the matter?
Charon, why doth thy face look so black, and thou use so much the water?
Oh, night was my mother. This is her mark. I cannot wash it off. Codrus, farewell.
Charon, adieu.
And exit Codrus.
Boatman?
Huh?
And exit Boatman there.
There's a scoff. That's a waterman indeed. Oh, I must to God Mars for all this. I would I could meet my soldier again.
And exits. So yes, we're getting very much an episodic who's Rafe going to encounter now quality to this. It's again, I should note for the viewers at home, the various voices are all noted. So there's multitudes of people calling for a boat. We have a small voice, which Rafe says should be a voice of a woman. A great voice, where I did my Brian Blessed impression. We have a voice hastily labelled also as a ghost of a grey friar. So yeah, we have various people calling out there in this scene. Lots of voices off. Thoughts about this particular episode, Eric?
Well, because this is what do you call it? It's a comedy, and obviously the only other comedy that I could think of that is set in hell is what do you call it? The Frogs, which is completely irrelevant and has no sort of bearing on it. It just it doesn't really. It's consistent with Lois's theory that Echo is not really there. It's just like sort of something that the muses have used to distract Rafe and get rid of him, but there isn't really an explanation as to why Charon is trying to trying to build bigger boats, as in, aside from maybe preparing for war.
Other thoughts? Aliki.
I thought that when he said hearken to the poor, that was probably one of the, there we go, here's what the play's about, or one of the things the play's about. We're going to say it as clearly as we can. Yeah, that's all I've got.
Yes, because I see it as thou art poor, thou art impatient. Lois.
Yeah, yes, I'm not quite sure I get the bit about the need for bigger boats, but clearly more and more people are dying. It would be a very relevant one to do now. But apparently, even in death, the rich get the boats before the poor do. That seems to be the the point of that, which seems very odd. Doesn't make sense. Yes, I'm not sure about the Echo. I mean, there's been this weird sprite that sort of led Rafe this far and then disappeared. So I don't know if this is some artificial device or somebody, whether it really is Echo or whether it's just some nasty sprite who's behaving like Echo. I mean, it's a pretty terrible Echo. So it could just be somebody that the muses somehow are able to get hold of and sort of see them pushing a button, call Echo or something, you know, and then just desperate signs, get rid of him. But certainly that's what happens here. I mean, the scene with between Charon and various would-be passengers is, I think, goes back to Lucian. Anyway, I mean, it's a classical satiric theme, and it's used a lot in the Renaissance. And I remember finding it a lot in Civil War literature. Every time anybody died in a Civil War battle, there's a scene where Charon is either refusing to take him or because he's so awful, or anyway, having a big argument and a discussion about who's coming next and so on. Yeah, it's, I don't know, I find it quite fascinating just because it is so episodic and you never know what's going to happen next. But it's funny as if Wilson hasn't quite worked out what his satiric point is. I mean, there's a general idea, everything is awful and the poor are being treated worse and worse. And, you know, we all get that, but somehow or other, it doesn't have any shape to it.
Yeah, somehow it has to do with being ruled by Venus, not Mars, which doesn't quite add up.
Yeah.
Maybe there are no spoils if you're not ruled by Mars.
Yeah.
I mean, the thing is, if it's something that's held together in part by the performer Rafe, you know, by the author, that this is to a degree a Shaggy Dog story to link a series of set pieces, then to a degree maybe we're trying too hard to find a plot, and it really is a matter of actually digging down into each scene individually. I do love the way the Rafe turns to the boatman and just goes ha and leaves. I think he's got your number very nicely. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Lois what I was saying. I think the scene is set at the River Styx. And I was just thinking about the whole custom of like putting coins on the eyes of the dead to facilitate their journey across the River Styx. And I thought it was kind of creepy. It was a kind of a creepy scene because you have all these souls calling out to be carried over into the land of the dead. And it kind of contrasted, I think, with the comedy of the previous scene in the songs.
Yes, that idea of paying for your journey, and the satire there about who can afford to go. So there's a really good connection there. Eric, Helen.
Well, see, my brain, while Elizabeth was talking, just went Davy Jones' Locker, like from Pirates of the Caribbean, where he's punished for not for not ferrying souls across the void, basically. Which is an interesting concept, but I don't know how that would be relevant here.
Yeah, fair enough. Helen.
I put in the chat, but I think it's I'm getting more and more fond of the idea. Rafe is doing a grand tour of the classical world, as then known. So it doesn't actually matter who he sees and in what order. He's sent by this, he knows he is the messenger of the god Mercury. And he's off. And noting what he sees on the way. And sooner or later, he'll either deliver his message or run out of puff.
Yeah, I'm wondering, is it the thing that the magic that he's got means he can see regularly all these mythological creatures and and also allow other people in the room to see them as well. I don't know if that's stretching a point slightly. But then that sort of makes sense for Echo, is that, of course he's going to encounter Echo. Echo's going to be there. The only real problem with the Echo bit is nobody at some point says, that's Echo. You remember from this thing, the Echo's never properly explained as to what's going on, whereas most of the others, or at least that some sort of explanation actually is thrown in, rather than just there's some random noises off. Why is that happening? Which is, I think, how it comes across. I almost think that's why you need a physical echo to go with the echoing. Perhaps, maybe not. I might be overstating that. Anyway, we have 2 scenes left to go. One is essentially a speech, so I'm going to run them into each other, and then we will close the session. So scene 5, as we've got it listed, is a speech from enter Emnius, courtier Solus.
Even as the eagle soars against the sun, in spite of Phoebus' shine prize in his face, even as the swordfish meets the mighty whale and puts the huge hungry monster to disgrace, so Emnius' thoughts, intending to aspire, soar against the sun, and fleet in wrathful ire. The Duke, the sun that dazzles Emnius' eyes, the Duke, the hugy whale that overbears me, but I will gaze and blind him ere long, and play the swordfish, though he little fears me. The less suspected sooner shall I strike him, and this my reason is, for I mislike him. His daughter, with enticing words, is one mine own, but I disdain her were she fair far. Thus, 'tis for rule I cast, and princely throne, the state of prince, brighter than brightest star. And who doth hinder Emnius but the Duke? And therefore who should perish but the Duke? Shortly a solemn hunting he intends, and who but I is put in chiefest trust? Well, I'll be trusty if my pistol hold. In love and kingdoms Jove will prove unjust. He dead, I wed his heir and only daughter, and so shall win a crown by one man's slaughter. Suppose he have been kind, liberal, and free. Why, I confess it, but it's my desire to be able to bestow as he. And Till I can, my heart consumes in fire. Oh, sovereign glory, chiefest earthly good, a crown to which who would not wade through blood? Okay, then ruthless of his life do I resolve to wait my time till I have wrought his end. He dies, the duke shall die, and Emnius reign, were he my father or a dearer friend. Tears shall not hinder, prayers shall not entreat me, but in his throne my blood I soon will seat me.
And exit Boo Hiss. Following on, enter the soldier Rafe, Mars's lame porter in rusty armour and a broken bill, the herald with a pencil and colours.
Art thou one of God Mars, his train? Alas, good father, thou art lame, to be a soldier far unlusty. Thy beard is grey, thy armour rusty. Thy bill, I think, be broken too.
Friend, make not thou so much ado. My lameness comes by war. My armor's rustiness comes by peace. A maimed soldier made Marty's porter. No, this am I. Now questioning cease.
And what are you? A painter with your pencil and your colours brave?
No painter, but a herald, sirrah, to decipher a gentleman from a knave.
Oh, pray, sir, can ye gentleman and knave it, both in one man? And ye can, sir, I pray you do it in me.
Indeed, I cannot in thyself, for all is knave that is in thee.
Sing 1, 2, and 3, sing after me, and so shall we right well agree.
Sir, take no heed what he doth say, his foolish humour you do see. But tell me, pray, are you a herald?
I am.
I should have rather took you to have been a Pele's prentice, you with colours so provided. In ancient times have heralds been esteemed and held companions for the greatest kings. Augustus Caesar made a law, so did Antonius too, that without heralds' grave advice, princes should nothing do.
Well, then was then. These times are as they be. We now are fain to wait who grows to wealth and come to bear some office in a town. And we, for money, help them unto arms, for what cannot the golden tempter do?
A lamentable thing it is, but tell us, I entreat, where we might find adored Mars.
From hence, sir, you to Venus' court must pass. Adown the hill, the way is steep, smooth, sleek as any glass. Go by the door of dalliance, and if you there him miss, ask Niceness, for she best can tell where her fair lady is. Both day and night the doors are ope. The strongest closet door is but of feathers made. Rush boldly in, stand not to ask, and never be afraid.
At Venus' court, sir, do you say that Mars is to be found?
Gentlemen, we have told ye truth, although unto our hearts it be a wound. For searching as we bid you, sir, no doubt a wondrous hap, but you shall find God Mars asleep on Lady Venus' lap. This one thing more, you cannot come, the way you thither pass. 'Tis dangerous, the hills too steep and slippery, all is scarce. Take this of me, the fairest way, from Venus' court is beggary. There are more ways, but they are worse, and threaten more extremity.
Aye, that's for such as thither pass, a pleasure and a will. But these for other purpose go, doubt therefore, sir, no ill.
I thank you both that have warned us by your skill.
Aye, and I'll end with a prophecy for your goodwill. You think it is a pleasant jest to tell the times of peace and rest, but he that lives to 99 into the hundreds shall decline. Then shall they speak of a strange time. For it will be a wondrous thing to see a carter lodge with a king. Towns shall be unpeopled seen, and markets made upon the green. This will be as true, I tell ye all, as cobblers use the thread and all. And so, because that all men are but mortar, I leave the paltry herald and the porter.
I pray thee come away. Gentlemen, with thanks I take my leave.
Adieu, good sir.
farewell unto you both.
And they exit, and oh yes, just that sort of linking thread of why people are traveling sort of starts coming together. Yes, they're looking for Mars. There is a journey, there is a thing. I just love the way that Rafe just says, and I'll end with a prophecy, and you can almost hear everyone going, "Oh no!" It's like someone saying, "I'm just going to play on the spoons for a bit." And it's a question: is that a song? Is it when he's prophesying? Is there a tune that goes with it? Because it would work very well that way. I love asking directions. I always love it when someone has to give slightly weird directions to places. Down a hill, the way steep, smooth, sleek as any glass. Might want to put your chains around your tyres first. And yeah, it's a nice fun little thing. It does sort of help if you know a bit about these figures and what's going on, but there are little nuggets to be found within it. It's hinting again at plot when they're talking about, Mars is found at Venus Court. Where's this going? I think we know where this is going now. Enough breadcrumbs have been spread, perhaps, he said. We might go somewhere else. Any other thoughts? Also about, of course, we had this speech by Emnius, who is small and mighty and evil, and, will prick you with his, like a fish thing. Boo hiss. He's evil. Eric.
I was trying to subconsciously count how many times he said "die" in that speech, just because he actually went sort of. I don't know. He went from yes, this lovely image of Phoebus and the light and so on, and then sort of going from that to he will die, he will die, he will die. It's no other words in his vocabulary.
Yes. Other thoughts, Helen.
Yeah, I had a lot of trouble keeping up with some of the imagery because it seemed to be he was being dazzled by a very, very large whale. And I didn't have time to go through the text and actually sort out what is happening, but he does seem to be having problems with this whale, but he's going to be a swordfish, so that'll be all right.
Yeah, because he is sort of deliberately splicing these two things together. So yes, he's talking. There's someone who's more important than him, who is like an eagle flying and thing, and then he goes on to saying about this figure is also a giant whale, but I'm like a swordfish or whatever, and I can puncture him and they do get nicely slightly, and I'm wondering whether that's actually for comic effect as well, because this is a comedy, he said, unless I'm proved horribly wrong. Lois.
Well, he does seem to be coming out of a different play at that point. I mean, on his previous appearance, I don't think there was any indication that he was going in this direction. And he also mentions that he's got the love of this Duke's daughter. We haven't met either the Duke or the daughter before. I mean, it's all like, where is all this happening?
Well, it is possible that the earlier courtier figure was not literally this person. That's one for me to check. I said before we went up that I may have elided figures who had names and figures who are just referred to as by their type. I suspect it isn't. I suspect they are still the same person, and just he hadn't played his cards. But yeah, he doesn't really make any impression in the previous scene at all, per se. But it could be that he's actually technically a different person, and that is one for me to double check. It's one of the reasons we do these readings, is to figure out what the text is actually doing, because the text often lies about who people are, or is deeply unclear. Yeah, other thoughts about this? I just there's a real arts and crafts vibe to this play. You know, we had pens earlier, and we got pencil and colours. I like that. The colours, of course, might not be colouring crayons. I just throw in my mind, because he's a herald, so they could be flags and things. But that's what immediately leapt to my mind when I read that. The lame porter, because obviously Mars is not doing what he should be doing.
I mean, it's Vulcan who's supposed to be lame, not Mars's porter.
Yeah.
I mean, this confused me somewhat.
Yeah, why not? Mash it together.
Yeah, but also theoretically, it's supposed to be Apollo who's the sort of, god of prophecy, not Mercury. But I mean, they kind of, it depends on how you read it, I guess.
Mercury's on a mission from Jupiter. Mercury's been sent, he's the messenger, he's been sent to do this thing. It's Jupiter's misfortune that Mercury has subcontracted it to a rather strange cobbler.
Well,
This is the danger. This is the danger of outsourcing. Just to clearly leveled here is we've got so many removes now. When Mercury's brought before the select committee, he'll just say, "Well, ultimately it wasn't down to me. We subcontracted the work out, and I can't be held accountable, and I'm not going to resign." Aliki, I think I talked over.
Well, I mean, Mercury's a trickster, and he always has fun. So you've got no business assigning him jobs that you don't want him doing in the most amusing to him way possible. I still don't really know what to make of this play, but I'm beginning to really enjoy the way that everything is strung together by this person. And I think what you need is somebody who's a much better clown than me. You know, one of those people who is utterly compelling to the audience, because that's all you need, is somebody who, they can lift their elbow and you don't know why, but the whole audience is laughing. That person will carry you through that.
Eric Morecambe.
He's dead.
Yeah, there's quite a few of those kind of, but yeah, it really is one of those things where doing the clown work is really important. And then for the rest of the cast, it's really about holding together. The narrative within each scene has to be clear. And I think one of the problems we've identified is that it isn't always clear. We understand vaguely what the scene is doing, but it's not sharp enough in terms of the way it's transmitted to us today. And but there's still a lot of really good stuff here. I mean, I've enjoyed this afternoon on the whole. It's it could be funnier, and it could be clearer. Alan,
I must admit, the comedian that was bringing to my mind was the Q series with Spike. You could see Spike as Red Cobbler, wandering between totally disconnected scenes as the only common element.
Yes, there is a certain level of anarchy to what Rafe is doing here, as just wandering through and just doing things that just go horribly disjointed. And yes, that sense of danger to what he's going to do.
You can almost hear the sort of Milligan, what do we do now? What do we do now? What do we do now?
Let me prophesy. Eric.
Well, also, it's just like it's setting stuff up in terms of, like all these characters coming on and wanting things aside from Rafe. And also even just Rafe going, yes, I will end with a prophecy, or yes, look, a song. It's very sort of signposting everything, which I guess is what Wilson does. But it's just sort of very interesting to see.
Helen.
Yes, we haven't got anything from the scholar or the country gentleman, but from that initial dispute, we seem to have both the courtier and the soldier who have also got their own trajectories. And presumably, now that we've seen them in more than one scene and we now know what their purpose is, or what they think their purpose is, we'll now see more of them. So it's just not now just one Bod going through a series of random sketches, there are more threads.
Yeah, and it's not really spoilery to say that, yes, we're going to see more from the soldier, we're going to see more from the courtier, we will see a certain amount from the country gentleman and others of that to a degree. We're even going to see the wife again, who's at home mad and asleep, of whom we've heard nothing more this session. So yes, there is a shape, even though there are, and now that we're getting closer and closer to Mars and to Venus and the sort of the setup that we had, there may be more sense the thing, but then again, maybe not. Who knows? We won't know till tomorrow when we do this. Any additional thoughts before we go into final thoughts, Lois?
It's possible that if there is any kind of message in this, I mean, given that it's so much about disentangling Mars from Venus, which is going to be the point, I take it, of Mercury's message when it finally gets there. Certainly a lot of people in the 1590s wanted war. I mean, Elizabeth's courtiers were all about war, really. So, because that was where they came into their own and they were important. So I don't know if there is some such idea floating around, but if so, it's not being treated straightforwardly, because there are some lines about how war isn't necessarily that great a thing and it causes a lot of misery. And, I'm not sure that Wilson is really pushing for that exactly, but he is, I think, still suggesting that the soldier is some kind of ideal of purity relative to everybody else.
Okay, we're not quite into extra time, but I'm happy to go around the room now for final thoughts on the play so far. Helen, any final thoughts?
Well, nothing that I haven't already said. I think it's very Robert Wilson centered. I think it is very much a vehicle for his comedy. It is Robert Wilson, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, I think it's written by him as a vehicle for his own comedy. And I think it's possible that we would be wrong to try and read anything particularly deep into it than a series of crowd-pleasing oddities along the way.
Aliki, final thoughts?
I'd be interested in how we make these oddities crowd-pleasing. I'm really fascinated by the play, the meta stuff, the classical stuff, the politics, the dirty jokes, and how you mix that all together. I don't really know, but I'd like to try.
Alan, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think getting this over to a modern audience will be a bit more tricky than it was potentially at the time, because certainly I've not got the general knowledge of, the myth systems upon which it is based, which I suspect would probably have been more common among the target audience at the time. Once we get into Greek myth, I start getting extremely confused very quickly. And I think there are a number of bits in it which are almost in-jokes with, yes, you remember you sat through hours and hours of this in school and had to, construe the Latin or the Greek or whatever.
Elizabeth, final thoughts? Muted.
Yeah. I did enjoy today's session. I think that the play has the episodic nature that one of the guests was talking about, the episodic nature of the text makes it a bit choppy. I found that some scenes were really fast-paced and engaging, and other scenes were a bit slow, and there was sort of the humorous elements, the songs that kind of were incongruous with some of the other elements, like the Charon scene. So I found this play a mixed bag. I think I found it a mixed bag. My favourite character in the narrative was Sateros. I thought Sateros really jumped out at me.
Excellent. Lois, final thoughts?
Yeah, I quite like it. I think it would work quite well as a play for a school or college audience of people who already knew perfectly well what the nine muses were, and all these things, and it could be done, I think, rather effectively as a complete mixed bag. I mean, some very modern references. I think the Charon scene could be played just as a modern allusion to the present situation. Whereas you could play the muses scene and some of the other classical allusions as sort of spoofs. We can only afford three muses, and they've only got one pen between them, and so that, and I think probably Rafe was probably not only a brilliant clown but a song and dance man and all sorts of things. I mean, he can just keep doing things to keep everybody entertained. I don't know. I think there's just lots of scope for something. It's really more review style than play, and with that sort of Brechtian tone to it, that songs are sometimes being used to make sure the audience gets a particular point.
Eric, final thoughts?
I was going to say that in comparison with the Peddler's Prophecy, it has much less xenophobia and racism.
Yeah, we haven't really had it.
I know, right? It's so weird.
It is, of the four plays so far, the one that hasn't made us go at any point yet.
Well,
there's a couple of lines, there's a few words here and there, but not in terms of active content. It hasn't been anywhere. So sorry, I
No, that's basically what I was going to say. That it's interesting how, like, it even if they were written within years of each other, it's just like sort of what on earth happened in between. it just sort of, and well, Peddler's Prophecy is way weirder in terms of this guy just sort of setting people up for things and then not delivering, which I guess is the same thing as Rafe does, except he actually sort of performs his prophecies to the best of his ability, and then no one else wants to listen to them. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to see how this is going to end.
Well, of course, the thing is, it might be that he hasn't done any prophesying at all. He's been told he's a prophet, and therefore he thinks this is what he's supposed to do. He will have a prophecy later on that is labelled prophecy, but it might be that he's just, I'm a prophet, so I will prophesy now. This is me prophesying. Yeah, honest. So there might be something interesting going on there. Yeah, I mean, it's really interesting. It has such a good opening. That first scene is just really flew along, and then we hit scene 2, and it suddenly goes BAM! And stops. And, that's a really difficult second scene to go into. It's unfortunately a really important second scene because it introduces a lot of the characters who will recur later on. I don't have any of the same problems with any of the scenes that follow. Yes, they do have classical references. Yes, we may need to get some additional information across to an audience, but they contain things intrinsically that are quite interesting or funny.
I've got a problem. Which scene do you mean by scene 2?
The one that we had labelled as scene 2.
The one with the wife?
No, with the soldier.
No. So, introduction of the soldier.
Yeah.
Got you.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, you have this.
I was thinking that the wife was scene 2 and the introduction of the gods was scene 1. No, got you.
I mean, you could break it up that way. There are other ways of breaking up the text, but yeah, it's that scene with the soldier and Contempt and all this debating that it's really, really difficult to understand what's going on. And I mean, that may be in rehearsal and staging, fine. Whereas the rest of the play, I don't have that problem. It does have lots of classically things that we need to maybe help the audience with. And I think the idea of just throwing in the occasional modern aside is probably enough, and actually would probably be funny. And, has a sort of thing of saying, well, we know this line isn't from the original because of the way we played it, and therefore, but we're still then doing the original, and that's fine. So is a reasonable enough remove without saying that we're, rewriting the text. It's full of great material that I love finding material that we can do stuff with, as well as part of other shows. So yeah, it's definitely at the moment of the four, it's riding very high. It's because of the nature of the satire it's doing. It's sometimes very difficult to tell from other plays with the satire that's going on, whether it's being actually offensive or whether it's trying to, make fun of people being offensive. And there's a whole dangerous, awkward line, which, especially given, several hundred years, you tend to fall off the other side. So yeah, lots of possibilities. Any additional final thoughts? Because we have time in lieu. Eric.
Also, it doesn't have. Interestingly, it doesn't have a prologue. I don't know if that's part of the original planning of the play or just like it was lost. But yeah, it's just interesting that instead of the prologue, you get this sort of interaction between Ceres and Mercury.
Well, there's no guarantee they didn't have a prologue. It almost probably did, depending on the context of what. It depends who's producing it as well. But prologues could be very, very occasion based. So it might be that it just didn't get printed or wasn't kept, and it may not have actually referred to any of the action in the play. It might have been a more generic kind of thing. Lois.
Well, the first scene is really a prologue. I mean, it ends by referring to the identity of the audience there. Mercury recognizes people are waiting for something to happen, and then Ceres throws them candy or something. So it's very like a prologue in that sense.
Aliki.
You could address that with the same thing you had suggested for the mythology, which is we have a character who's on from the beginning. They're very obviously modern. I suggested in the chat that they have a phone and headphones on. And as the procession goes by, they could be like, well, look, that's Venus, okay, and that's Ceres, and oh, hang on, who's that? Oh, right, okay. And that's kind of cute. You could set it up that way, and then they'd make sense coming up every now and then and going, she's the muse of comedy.
Well, I mean, to a degree, what Mercury's speech sort of already does that. I mean, you might change the tenses slightly. So the first is Jupiter rather than was, and next, so that's a concurrent rather than a follow-on. It's sort of a question as to how that opening was staged as opposed to how we would stage it, of which there is wiggle room either way. I definitely think, you can really make that procession explanatory. I don't think, characters like Charon needs explaining per se. The boatman across the river is still has good common currency. Dealing with the muses is slightly harder, but then not insuperable by any stretch of the imagination. And I think most people again also sort of understand Mars and Venus as a concept, if only because of popular literature. Eric, then Alan.
I was going to say that for the echo scene, you could just have someone in the audience because it looks like, based on the way it's read, there's a part where Rafe actually chases her off or something, or sort of. So you could have someone at the back of the audience echoing things, and then oh, a pretty wench, and so on and so forth, or whatever. It just kind of, it's very sort of interesting how the echo would perform in that context.
Yeah, the echo, because the echo, there is no stage direction saying echo enters or exits. So the echo it is implied that it is just a voice doing echoing. But again, having something to it's Rafe just chasing after a shiny thing, isn't it? Just going and it's a sort of distraction on his journey because he's still chasing it when he enters and gets to the river and he's sort of calling out, and then he's going, I better go on to Mars at the end, and I wish I could meet that soldier again that I met earlier, so there is a sort of this semi-linkingness to it all, and that there is a journey actively being pursued here. But Echo is one of the places where it kind of just needs someone to say, that's Echo echoing. You just need someone to just make it clear as to what actually is happening there, because for anyone watching the video when I was reading it who wasn't looking at the script, It's just me randomly just doing strange things, and that's just sort of weird, but not unusual on these videos. Alan?
Yeah, I was just thinking, in fact, if we looked again at this, I think we could put in a scene break, call it 1A, at the entrance of Rafe. So in other words, scene 1 proper is effectively the Ceres Mercury duologue, and then morph straight into 1A, which is the Rafe Zelota sequence, followed by the re-entry of Mercury.
Yeah, I mean, we could do. I don't think we need to, because there's no indication that Mercury ever exits. So Mercury is a constant presence there. It could exit and re-enter and do all sorts of things.
Or could just stand to one side of the stage.
Yeah, it's basically because Rafe's entrance is effectively a bridge there, because Rafe enters singing and bringing that staff, and it's enough of a break from the previous motion.
Because there's no exit shown in the series, who presumably...
No, but I added that in. Yes, and Now I Am Alone is a reasonably clear indicator that he's alone.
Yeah.
Now I am alone.
So you could again, almost do that as, which would make the scenes more logical in because there's quite a jump in the mythological conversation between Ceres and Mercury, and then the interaction with, some form of real world.
I'm not sure I'd want to break up the thought, because it is where the real world and that collide, and I don't know if I'd want to think about it as separate things. It's such an effective unit of action as well, that whole progression through to the end of Rafe. Other thoughts? Eric?
Well, I guess also what's interesting is that that first scene with the stool and so on and so forth is very, very sort of like he's written in what the clown will do, basically, whereas everything else is kind of not as descriptive. Like, what is everyone else doing at that time? Not everyone else, but I mean, sort of, later on when you get all, the three courtier, the courtier, the soldier, and so on and so forth. Are they just standing there reacting to what everyone else is saying? Are they sort of loyally sort of preparing their briefcase or something with their case, or what?
Well, yeah, I mean, I'd assume, broadly speaking, that they're not doing anything particularly special, because there are lots of interesting stage directions, especially involving rods, and so the implication is there that actually there's not necessarily a lot going on except interpolated stuff about Rafe that Rafe won't need to write down in the script if it's his script. I mean, that's the thing. There might be a huge amount of Rafe business here. He's not going to write it. He doesn't need to write it down. He wrote it. If we're assuming that he is Rafe, which we kind of all are, because it would be the most logical thing. Though here there is the whooping is there, so maybe there are the odd aid memoir. Other thoughts before we close? You don't have to have any additional thoughts. It is fine. We've had lots of thoughts with the Cobbler's Prophecy so far. This is it for the first session. There's only one more session. It's a relatively short play. We probably could have got a little further today, but then we would have been really short tomorrow. All that remains is to thank Helen for helping prepare the script, and everybody else for their wonderful reading, and goodbye.
Bye.